Then he told the prison guards to flog Jesus. Pilate instructed them to assign Jesus to the next detail of guards escorting the condemned to be crucified. The prison guards loved their work and beat Jesus some more. They took the staff and robe from him, saying, "You won't need these where you're going, but we'll leave you your crown." Dyes of red and purple were extremely expensive. The robe would bring a handsome bonus for them. They did not want the escort detail to get it instead. It was normal for them to steal prisoners' possessions, so this was not a remarkable event. The flogging was bitter. Every strike broke the skin, leaving raw, open flesh behind. Jesus was dehydrated, but the dried sweat made its way into his split flesh. It burned like fire. His twin staunched the blood, but could not take the pain away. Jesus remembers every blow. There were 12 of them. Though much had occurred, it was still morning, not that long after dawn. The prison guards handed Jesus over to one of the details that brought the condemned to be executed. The storehouse held crosses that were already built and reused. They had 3 dragged out by the thieves. When they tried to make Jesus drag his, he was too weak. Even the sharp goads for encouragement could not make him manage. The escort detail detained the first male Jew that walked by. This man's name was Simon of Syrian. The thieves took care of their own crosses. With Simon's labor, the detail made good time to Golgotha. Upon arriving at the place, they impaled the thieves and raised them. The middle hole in the ground would hold Jesus' cross. The hole had a ramp on one side to slide and guide the end of the cross into the hole. Once the cross was raised, a block of wood was inserted and wedged into the gap, holding the cross upright. It took 5 men to raise the laden cross. 3 at the sides and middle, and then 2 more men ready with poles to push the crossbar the rest of the way until gravity settled the cross into the hole. The clearance from the ground to the condemned's feet was about 3 feet. The total height was about 10 feet. Because the crosses were reused over and over, they stank of death, blood, and excrement. This was in spite of being rinsed in between each use. There was a small block of wood to rest your buttocks on. It was not for a kindness. A prisoner would last and suffer longer if they used it. The guard often laughed when someone would slip off the block to be brought up short by the spikes. The jarring brought new jolts of pain from the impaled body parts. They had to find an extra spike to mount the sign to the head of the cross for Jesus. Once the sign was affixed, they told Jesus to strip after they unbound his hands. He could barely move his arms, and his hands were numb. Jesus managed to shrug out of most of his clothes. The guards saw that they would have to finish stripping him to his loincloth. This earned more blows. They didn't like touching him. They did not like having to touch these people who were going to die soon. They lay him down without a struggle onto the cross. After taking his measure, they matched his wrists to the nearest existing holes. Each wrist was impaled with a spike. It shattered some wrist bones, but the strong tendons and ligaments would hold and retain Jesus' weight. Except for burns, bone pain is the worst deep pain you can imagine. Jesus tried not to pull away or cry out. The guards were professionally curious about this lack of resistance. Jesus said a silent prayer through the nausea and pain, through gritted teeth. "Please, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing." The second wrist was worse because Jesus now knew what it would feel like. When both arms were pinned, they gathered his legs together. One man had his knees and another had his calves. They roughly bent his knees to the side with his ankles overlapping. The twist was to the right from the hip. They lined up his ankles with the existing hole, and then they impaled him. It took several blows to get the spike all the way through into the hole. Every blow awakened new waves of pain and nausea. It was worse when it was time to raise the cross. The weight was now being borne on the wrists and the ankles alone. When the cross grounded into the hole, the impact made a jolt of pain so intense that Jesus passed out. The one had timed this moment to coincide with a solar eclipse. The newly risen sun was obscured for 10 minutes. The guards had already blocked the cross into place to stabilize it. The eclipse scared the guards, but it did not stop them from taking bets for the pile of clothes, including Jesus's, after the sun came back. The game passed some time. Jesus was silent as passerbyers cursed and taunted him. This was normal in the custom as well. The women who were the disciples of Jesus were there. They had provided money and service to Jesus in their travels. They did this out of love. They did this out of respect he showed them. He loved them for the lessons he shared without bias. They loved him for the kind, gentle soul they found in him. The only two apostles were Thomas the twin and Mary of Magdalene. All the other apostles had fled for Galilee. Peter was the last to leave town because he tried to stick it out, but after his denials, he was ashamed. When Jesus came to from passing out, he saw his mother Mary and Thomas standing near. Because Thomas, though a twin, was Jesus' younger brother, he told Thomas to take care of their mother from that time on. Thomas was still unmarried like Jesus, and unlike James and his other brothers. As such, he was Thomas's duty next in line to care for Mary's needs, being a widow. Jesus stayed perched on the block for a long time, but finally, after slipping off a few times, he had no more strength to remount the block. The women had gotten permission to give sips of watered wine on a cloth to ease Jesus' swollen tongue. Jesus' tongue was sticking to the roof of his mouth by now. They did this often until, unstuck, he asked them to do the same for the two thieves. The thieves did not have any family show up to keep vigil until they died. As a result, no one was there to aid them in that way. It was after this that both criminals asked Jesus to forgive their sins. Jesus did agree to, of course. He was a minister to the very